Good afternoon, Robert Scribbler. It is September 20th, 2018, a Thursday. Thank you for joining me for another climate change and clean energy video blog. Now for this segment, I'm going to provide an update for you on some of the ongoing impacts related to Hurricane Florence. It is worth noting that Hurricane Florence itself is long gone. But as with many of the extreme disasters that we have seen recently, particularly relating to hurricanes amplified by human-caused climate change, the impacts linger. But before I get into that, I'd just like to take a look at the satellite shot provided by NOAA at the National Hurricane Center, showing a relatively quiet Atlantic in the wake of a couple of very active weeks. It is worth noting, though, that we do have an area of disturbed weather in the tropical Atlantic east of the Caribbean and moving off toward the west. And the National Hurricane Center does indicate a 20% chance for this area of clouds and thunderstorms to develop into a tropical cyclone over the coming days. If it does, it will, like Florence, be moving into regions where sea surface temperatures are warmer than normal, and if atmospheric conditions remain favorable or become favorable, then this storm or the set of storms could potentially pose a risk to the United States. At this point, the probability of that is relatively mild to low, but certainly something to keep an eye on given present conditions. So looking back at Florence's impacts, I'd like to focus on a set of impacts that involve dispersals of toxic waste, toxic biological waste, and in all honesty, animals that have been killed by Florence into the floodwaters, which is resulting in a public health risk. And according to North Carolina's Department of Environmental Quality, about 110 swine lagoons or pig farm waste lagoons have been damaged, overtopped, inundated, or surrounded by floodwaters to an extent that there is risk of waste dispersal into the floodwaters. Overall, it's also worth noting that 2.4 million chickens and turkeys were killed by the storm, many of them drowned and floating in the floodwaters, as well as another 5,500 pigs. In addition, one coal ash pit was inundated, likely resulting in at least some dispersal of coal ash into the floodwater. As this Sierra Club Twitter post and Gizmodo article notes, is a public health crisis due to combined inundation by floodwaters and a biological hazards being released into those floodwaters and chemical hazards as well. So a really nasty situation for North Carolina at this time. Looking at the satellite shot, I do want to show you some comparisons for flood imagery, and I'm going to go back to a period prior to when Florence struck, where we had some clear skies, and just want to note river levels here. So this satellite photograph is from August 29th, and you can see some of the river footprints in the satellite shot. This is a NASA Worldview shot. And then transitioning to September 18th, you can see the comparative expansion of river basins and wet wetland areas, areas covered by water in these two shots. So flipping back and forth, you can see the banks of these rivers basically expand into the surrounding lands. I'm going to go ahead and flip back and forth just one more time for you to see. So the flooding of Florence on September 18th, very visible in the satellite shot. I also like to note that is also visible is the dumping of this biological toxin-laden water into the local ocean environment. And I'm just going to go ahead and zoom in, and you can see this very clearly, these plumes of water moving out into the ocean. And this is a bit of a concern because these waters are very highly laden with nutrients in the form of animal waste and in the form of runoff from soils that have been picked up by the floodwaters and flushed out into these waterways and estuaries and then out into the ocean. And this is a concern as well for public health because such a high level of nutrient loading can result in algae blooms. And we've seen a similar situation in Florida where warm waters have combined with runoff, highly nutrient-rich runoff, to produce extreme algae bloom type situations, both in the form of red tides and in the form of cyanobacteria blooms, which have been very harmful to marine ecosystems as well as human industry along the waterways and human health as well. So this is something that I think we need to keep an eye on. I don't want to sound too much of an alarm, but when it comes to human-caused climate change, the increasing intensity of rainfall events does increase the risk of algae blooms due to this flushing of heavier nutrient-laden waters into estuaries and oceans. And in addition, warmer sea surfaces also provide a more favorable environment for algae blooms, which can further enhance algae bloom type situations when they do occur. And just looking at the sea surface temperature map, sea surface temperatures off North Carolina are quite warm in the range of 28 degrees Celsius or 82 degrees Fahrenheit, which is much warmer than normal, in the range of about 2 degrees Celsius above normal to, in some of the sound regions, about 3 degrees Celsius above normal. So very warm waters and a lot of nutrients heading out into those waters as a result of the flooding produced by Florence and the impacts to agriculture flooding as well. So just an update on the situation with regards to Florence. Many regions in North Carolina still inundated, still recovering, and a public health crisis ongoing due to the dumping of biological toxins and other toxins as a result of very severe flooding of an agricultural region. Thank you for joining me, and I'll be chatting with you soon.